No, that's too long. Don't want to wait for 30 minutes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new show of 302 of a Kind. Happy Friday, I would say. How's it going, Kevin?
Happy Friday. Happy Friday. I love the quick jump in. It's like 30 seconds. And this day and age is way too long. There's probably 10 TikTok videos. So let's cut it down and jump right in.
Yeah, we probably get gray hair until then. So we don't want to do these kind of things. Great.
No time to lose. I love it. Time is money.
Time is money.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was like, how are you doing? It's Friday. Weather's good so far, at least in Munich, Germany.
Yes, it's Friday. Weather is nice. I'm still in the US. I'm in a beach house here in Michigan, and we had bad weather the whole week, except for now. You know, that's the pattern of the universe. As soon as you start to do anything that looks like work, good weather will happen.
Yeah, we had bad weather throughout the week, and now the weather's getting better for the weekend. So we're really happy about this. And we got first people being online. For instance, Jens is already there, but he was there already before the session today. So it's a very early person, punctual. I really love that. Then we've got Kaffee Meow. Hey guys, great to have you on board as well. Yeah, meow. Or I don't know how to say hello in cat. And I think we got a couple of things prepared already, and we can run you through what has actually happened in general in the SEO world, in the AI mentions changes so far. So let me quickly share my screen so far. It's really good to have some technical difficulties on a Friday evening, right?
But that's when they're coming. It's like the weather.
It's like the weather. What can go wrong will go wrong. So I think first thing, and it's actually, I need to get my right hat on at this position because we got a very proud announcement as a company, right? It's finally available within the SEMrush Enterprise. So the crawling technology from Right has been transferred and is now available through a beta phase in the SEMrush Enterprise kit. So everybody who wants to give it a try, reach out to us, and we're happy to give some insights there.
Nice. Yeah.
Have you tried it yet? Have you had a look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm blessed to have been very close with you guys and use the platform, and I'm also blessed to be, close to the enterprise team over at SEMrush, and have access to the enterprise suite and had a chance to look at one or the other beta features and alpha features. And so, yeah, it's obviously a super powerful crawling engine, no doubt. I think it's exactly what you would expect from an enterprise product. And it's great to see live embedded with all the other features, right? So no brainer for me.
Yeah, and I think this is actually where the real power comes from. It's like everybody knows the crawler, and they kind of have some places where you can compare them. I mean, you want to open a website and show this in some kind of tables, but I think really the cool thing is that you can compare it and combine this with other data sources. So keyword tracking, DDoS traffic data that you can use with that. So there are many interesting things, and obviously the standard enterprise features that you would always expect from this perspective. Everybody. And more to come, and we're like definitely on a very hot streak what we're doing there. Got some cool plans there. Just teasering a little bit. Everybody who's interested into this and to maybe get a little bit more grasp, because this is not like an advertisement show. There will be a webinar next week on Tuesday. It's 7 p.m. my time, unfortunately, so it's a little bit late. And I got the approval from my wife to stay up longer and to keep on working to participate there. So this is going to be really interesting. So we're looking into also how does technical SEO crawling capabilities actually also work with AI nowadays, and how LLMs are actually working upon this. So feel free to register there. We'll share the link in the aftermath so you can really look into this, and I'm really happy to be part of that as well. And I think with that, we can actually cut the corner when it comes to advertisement, product features that we're showing now, and really dive in what has actually changed nowadays and what has happened in the past week or two. Actually, it was 2 weeks. Last week there wasn't a show, so we can definitely jump back into that.
Yes.
And first up is a pretty interesting study that we have been seeing. That was conducted at this position with a time range of over 2 years, and how actually traffic has changed throughout the web. And especially with a big question, how do AI chatbots actually work in there, and if they are replacing any search engines nowadays. So just throwing it directly at you, Kevin, what was your first take when you saw it at the beginning?
I think it's like one of the big fundamental questions. And I think it also like I think it's easy to believe that chatbots replace search engines because we see search engine referral traffic going down, right? So the logical assumption is if something goes down, what goes up? And the reality is nothing goes up. I know we have like another source that tries to answer the exact same question in a moment. So maybe we can combine the two. But yeah, I think that the logical kind of conclusion is that chatbots are taking away market share from search engines, and that does not seem to be the case. Important to say is also that both AI chatbots and search engines are becoming more and more the same, right? Google has AI overviews, and then obviously AI mode in the pipeline. AI mode just rolled out to 180 countries. That was announced yesterday. And that is obviously the same experience as ChatGPT. And at the same time, ChatGPT had made some pushes to obviously to include search, right, and to send more traffic to websites. Also, an interesting change there that happened at the end of July. But I'm gonna not jump around too much. So I think the conclusion here is that AI chatbots are additive to search right now in the grand scheme of things. And I will also say that it's important to be nuanced here because, on the one hand, people's habits for the last 2.5 decades have strongly formed around Google, right? Like it's deeply ingrained, and people change their habits only very, very slowly. So a behavior that you will see a lot of times is that people might use ChatGPT to come to a certain result, right? A certain brand they want to buy from, for example, and then they go to Google to navigate to that brand and then sign up there, right? So I will say that. And then the other thing is that even though AI chatbots have this very strong generative component, meaning they allow you to do things and people use them to do things instead of searching, part of doing is also searching, right? So it sounds a little bit paradoxical, but the reality is that when you fulfill a task, you often need information. That information comes natively in the chat, in the chatbot, in the AI chatbot. And so I think there is long term, there has to be some quote unquote impact on search. However, that does not mean that the net usage of Google has to go down, right? Even though you get some search queries answered in ChatGPT, does not mean you need to use Google less in that sense. So again, I think there's some nuance that is important to regard, but in the grand scheme of things, I think we see a lot of convincing data that ChatGPT is not subtractive from Google, it's additive and expansive.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And it kind of like also highlights like the challenge that what we've seen recently, that the AI mode is also not very sticky currently, depending also from different countries. But I think we talked about this study as well, this case study, where we've seen that people just test it out at the beginning and they say it's not within them, because if I want to have the navigation to the next hotel or maybe their opening hours or telephone number, I don't need AI. I just need like a simple extraction from this content and being presented to me.
What do you think about Bing being kind of like a big traffic winner here on this chart?
It's kind of interesting, but I mean, since we've seen also with OpenAI that they're using Bing as a backfold search engine sometimes, like there's still like this conspiracy of like what's the best result and where's the data coming from. And I just talked to a colleague of mine today where he said, like, look, there's this experiment where you just have the keywords coming from, it can invent a new keyword that hasn't been there previously, invented it, made it only available to Google, and searched it through ChatGPT, and it actually showed up, which is kind of like a proof that ChatGPT is also referring traffic to using Google as a search engine. But I think this test or this experiment would have been also additionally interesting if they would have done the same thing just for Bing, so excluding Google at the same time, to see if it actually goes both ways. Because what I've heard so far, and I definitely need to double check this resource again, is that we are also seeing that with ChatGPT-5, or OpenAI actually got a little bit nuance and also distributing their resources where they're coming actually from. And it's not just binary, but they're also looking at, okay, where's the best resource that's actually being exploited. And therefore, I think they might be a very good traffic winner at this position.
Yes, I agree. I also want to caution, or I caution all of my clients to think that, ChatGPT only relies on Google now, because I still see a lot of instances where a client is not present at all in ChatGPT, and they're also not indexed on Bing. You know what I mean? Like, they have problems with Bing. So I agree with you. And it's very interesting to see, actually, Bing strongly promotes this narrative that they took market share from Google. It does seem like that in a little bit. Now, the question is always how much, right? It's probably not company changing, and Bing will not replace Google ever, I think. But it's interesting. Like, who would have thought that Bing is like one of the winners in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, just when we talked previously before coming onto the show, it's like I did some research with the agent mode from ChatGPT to book myself a flight from getting from Munich to San Francisco, just for a test of it, because I think it's really powerful what you can do with this stuff. And actually, what it did is it created a virtual machine where it was searching for me on a Chrome engine. And was using Bing as the default search engine at this position. And coming back to our last session, which we had 2 weeks ago, where we talked about like there's still this kind of like fight between OpenAI and Microsoft, and just like we got off the call and then we saw like first post saying like Microsoft loving OpenAI. So maybe that didn't age quite well at this position.
Man, it's just, this show is just a source for accurate predictions. That's the takeaway here.
Yes. And didn't we talk also about when the AI mode will come to other countries? And we predicted, you said next earnings season?
Yeah, I said fall, and I think you said summer, and you were right.
Like end of summer, but I think I was actually more thinking about September, but yeah.
We're very close to September, and I'm much further away, so I think this prize goes to you.
Okay, but to be honest, let's be careful what we wish for. It might happen. And we see Rüdiger coming onto the show. I think that's great. Cool to have you here on this call as well. Really interesting. Yeah, but still very important study that we've been seeing here, and also quite interesting what has been conducted so far.
Yeah, actually, the SEMrush study that we have there in the in your row of tabs. Yeah, perfect. Thank you for reading my mind. I think that's a perfect transition, because the same question was reviewed here, just with different data. So the obviously, again, like the hypothesis is that ChatGPT is replacing Google, and SEMrush here used clickstream data from DDoS to validate that hypothesis. And I really like the methodology here. I think this was very smart. So there were different cohorts that SEMrush looked at, meaning people starting to use ChatGPT in different months. Important to note that the cohorts did not use ChatGPT previously, right? So if they looked at a cohorts from, say, May 2025, those users did not visit ChatGPT a single time before May 2025. So that's a clean methodology. And it also makes sense, because the reality is that every user adoption is in cohorts, right? It's not linear in that sense, right? It's different days or months that people start using a product. And based on when they start using the product, they have a different product experience, right? If you start in May of 2024, you have a different product experience compared to May 25, compared to May 26. So anyway, the conclusion also here is that there was no decrease in Google usage when people started to use ChatGPT. So when you scroll down a little bit further, you can see, yep, a little more. Yep. Okay, that's the first chart. And then there's another chart I was looking for, a cohort chart.
Oh, I should actually get an account. Interesting.
Perfect. Yeah, this one, January 25. So here you can see the blue line is when people start using ChatGPT, and then yellow is Google. And as you can see, the net volume of usage does not decrease. And so as a result, I think this validates that a lot of ChatGPT usage is, again, expansive, additive, does not subtract from Google. And people use ChatGPT for a lot of different things compared to Google. Now, what's interesting here is, and this is maybe a question for future research, we know that Google says that Google usage has been going up since they've introduced AI overviews. I'm very skeptical about that, but let's just take that for a fact. They said that, I think, after introducing Google AI overviews, Google usage increased by 10%. So how does that align with the fact that there's no decrease in Google usage when people started to use ChatGPT, right? Like, does that mean that maybe ChatGPT reduces the incremental usage that people would have on Google? That would be my kind of add-on question for a future study. Can we see? Can we compare this with people who are using AI or who are seeing AI overviews, and how does that change, right? And I'm saying that because it was a very similar trend when, for example, Facebook copied TikTok or Snapchat with stories, right? Or Instagram copied Snapchat with Reels. What happened is that the incremental growth of Snapchat and TikTok slowed down significantly, right? These companies still grew to some degree, but not as much incrementally because of new features. And I wonder if the same thing is happening with Google, where if ChatGPT wouldn't exist and they followed the same strategy, would they see a lot more usage from AI overviews and from AI mode? We don't know, but maybe it's a good idea for a follow-up study.
I'll put it into the team and pass it on to the team to see what we can see. But as you've been mentioning, I think the same experience we can see through also the other months, which I think is interesting. And to be also very interesting, I think your take also, like depending on which month you're starting out, is like very important to know. Because if we look back 2 years ago and we had the first big new LLM that I've been using, like the new ones are still so much better than the ones we had in the past. So it's like your experience is completely different at this position. And I think this definitely also has some kind of impact. But throughout those different months, it kind of like we see like a very similar pattern moving on so far. And as you've been saying also, I think this so important to note that changing a habit is kind of like very, very difficult at this position. So we have to consider this change management perception on where do we want to go to, and how do people search at this position at point in time.
Absolutely. And so how does this matter? Why is this important? It's important because if Google usage has not gone down, okay, then that means it's obviously still important to be on Google. And I think nobody really challenges that. I think there are some people out there who spin up narrative that now all the action is on ChatGPT and forget about Google. I think that is clearly disproven with all the data that we were seeing here. Google is still absolutely important, and it might also be important equally to be on ChatGPT, right? So I think it's not an either-or question, right? It's a both answer, or the answer is both, better said.
It's like Schrodinger's SEO's tactic.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's like dead and alive at the same time. You have to consider both.
Yes, dead and alive at the same time. I think the fact that referral traffic is down across the board, that is also a fact, right? But again, that does not mean that it's not important anymore to be present on these platforms.
Yes. And something that I've been like coming over and over again is like if we look at like how the SEO industry is currently changing, and what we've been seeing so far always was that actually like the SEO industry was spoiled by Google. Like Google is like so good at ignoring different issues, just like doing the job sometimes for the SEOs themselves, that now when we come to other systems, to other crawlers that are not as efficient, that maybe don't render JavaScript, these kind of things, like they matter much more again. So I think that's like kind of like an interesting how we're getting back to the basic at this beginning, and it's like remembering that we've just been spoiled over and over again.
Yes. Yeah, sure. I mean, look, Google is not wrong when they say that they're the biggest source of referral traffic on the web. I think that's changing now, to be honest, right? Like, like this whole idea of referral traffic, AI is killing the idea of referral traffic because you get answers on the spot, right? So a little bit is still remaining, but the volumes that we've been used to are clearly going down. And at the same time, we should not confuse referral traffic with influence, right? So it's still critical to be present on these platforms, but measuring success and traffic is not the right way anymore.
Yeah, traffic is a vanity metric.
Yes, yeah, always has been, to be fair, right? But the reality is that it's been a very interesting and attractive leading indicator, but that is going away now.
Yeah, good. So moving on, and let's tackle some topics regarding our agentic life that we've been seeing so far. And I think it's kind of interesting that NVIDIA currently says that they believe more into those different smaller language models currently, rather than to have this really, really big one on one end. So from my end, I know also looking into a sustainability impact, having smaller, more dedicated solutions might be something that's more efficient rather to maintain a big version. So I think from this perspective, this kind of already makes sense. But if you also say it has big impact on the results that we're seeing so far, that's also quite interesting. So what's your take on those ones?
It's the discussion of big foundational versus small and specialized models is one of the most foundational discussions in AI since the breakthrough of ChatGPT 3 in November 2022. And what I will also say is that I don't think this paper is biased. And at the same time, of course, NVIDIA has an interest in this narrative, because if you need more specialized models, you also need more specialized chips, right? If you have a model that is focused on, say, rendering videos or understanding videos and has like a strong visibility factor, that is a very different computational need than, say, a model that's focused on mathematics or spreadsheets. So, and that plays into NVIDIA sales because they can provide the specialized chips, but also some of the specialized software, right? They have their whole Barracuda engine that helps with computational direction, all that kind of stuff in the background. So it makes sense. And at the same time, I don't want to say that this discredits the paper. I think it's a valid one. Also because this is the narrative that a lot of the leading CEOs in this industry are also telling, right? Sam Altman has been saying that for a long time, that he sees a future of many small specialized models. And so the question is always, like, what's the interplay between big foundational and small specialized models? Are we going to see, for example, a small specialized model built on ChatGPT 5 that leans into a specific strength and maybe fine-tunes the model for a specific task? That would make sense. And how does that then relate to marketers, right? So I'm wondering about the small models that, for example, will help you with shopping. And you could argue that already exists with the agentic capabilities that ChatGPT has around shopping. But what will they be fine-tuned on, right? And what will be their kind of strengths? For example, are they especially good at understanding the memory context about you so that they can give you customized shopping recommendations? Or what are the models that are going to help people with gathering information, and what are they fine-tuned on, right? So essentially, the way that I think about this is you have the foundational models, which are similar to the core ranking systems that Google has. And then you have the specialized ones, which are similar to the quality updates that Google rolls out, where they maybe reward original content, where they punish aggressive backlinking, right? And so I'm thinking about these models in the same way as Google algorithms that reward different things. And so for us, I think the mission stays the same. It's to understand and reverse engineer and test these models if they specialize more in the future.
Yeah. By the way, we're just seeing that David came to the show, so aloha to you back. Aloha. Did you know actually in Hawaii it's forbidden to laugh out loud? The only thing is allowed is aloha. Wait a second, I just need to get my cup.
Oh god. Yeah.
Sorry, it's Friday evening in like late afternoon in Munich, so it's okay. We had a tough week so far. But just going back, also to Ria saying, but with more and smaller models, you will have different sources of truth. I think that's definitely absolutely true, which will lead to more biases and bias confirming of the use of models. Kind of also true.
It's interesting, right? Because I wonder if smaller specialized models will have a higher weighting or better defenses against hallucination. But of course, Ulrika is absolutely right that you always need to consider what are these models trained on? What's the corpus, data, or index of information that these models use for reinforced learning?
Yeah, and I would be interested, like what kind of different models that we can have, like small models would be something that way we can create new business, like what something where we can still like have some business opportunities that we could create right away, because we know the big models won't be able to do so. I've got one friend, he's an engineer, he's got like a 3D printer at home, and I was like at the beginning, like like this whole AI and world that we're living in the moment is so cool, because now previously, like, he had to program very difficultly his different things that he wanted to create through the 3D printer. And I was like, this is so easy now. You just say, I want to have, I don't know, like the small duck, please print it to me, and it will create it for you. Like, we've got with image generations already the good process. And he said, like, those models aren't really trained well on 3D printing things. So there's still some very big gaps that maybe we as marketers don't see that closely, because like the outside world that's maybe not digitally isn't that far already ahead. Or maybe also in construction sites or something like this, there's probably still big opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we know also food morning. Interesting that Hans uses this also in the afternoon. I think that's really cool. Good to have you here as well. I'm really happy to have it.
Hans probably thinks about the US time.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. But maybe that would be like a new opportunity for business models, like creating those different specialized modules and then just selling to the people directly.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, like it's very, very tricky. There's a lot of conversation right now around Cursor. So Cursor is this AI coding editor that basically does a lot of the coding for you. It's an incredible tool, but there's a lot of conversation of how sustainable their business model is. And I think it reflects exactly the conversation that you and I are having right now, because Cursor is deeply reliant on foundational model developers like ChatGPT or Claude. I think it uses mostly Claude. And that means that, they will always compete with Claude to a certain degree. I mean, Claude has their own coding editor. I think it's actually called Claude Code. And so the question is, like, as Claude raises the cost for these other applications, I think Cursor is the biggest API customer of Anthropic. Will that allow them to build a sustainable business model? And the same question applies to these smaller specialized models. So if you go out and you say, I want to build the best,
can you say like haggling model? Like, I think, like, for me, like, one of the best ideas would be to create like a model that's haggling with different vendors on the internet and tries to get like the best deal for you.
The negotiator.
Like, yeah, negotiator. Like, do you have like your own system, your own agent? And it's like, I want to buy, I don't know, like a new house or something like this, and then just like send it over to the internet. And it's like, okay, where can you find the best deals for me?
Yeah, exactly. So it's actually a perfect example, because you can build this model and then you can use the API from 11 Labs to mimic a true human voice and then call the salesperson of the software vendor and then negotiate with them, right?
Yeah.
They just pretend it's good enough so that the salesperson doesn't yet know that it's an AI, right? So now you're reliant on the 11 Labs API, and you're maybe reliant on Claude or the ChatGPT API. And both of these, when they raise your costs, your margins are going down, right? And so unless you're able to free yourself of the dependency to be reliant on these APIs, you're always a little bit on the hook. And it's always a little bit of a question of how sustainable are your business models. So in my opinion, for these smaller models to be truly efficient or sustainable, self-sustainable, they either need to come from the big LLM developers, right? OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini or Google, etc. Or there needs to be some agreement in place that these models can be sustainable, and the margins are not eaten up by price increases over time. And that's possible. We're seeing that in other industries as well. But it's a core challenge for these models to succeed.
Yeah. And I'm blending in this post and such. No, it didn't happen that quickly. About this. Interesting approach. But yeah, I'm totally with you with this. It is kind of like a very interesting challenge that we're going to have nowadays. So I would say we can move on to the next article. And I think this also kind of like ties into some of the topics we approached in the last 2 weeks ago, when we talked about also how maybe the brain's functionalities are going to shift with the usage of AI and so on. And we see that there are also some doctors who erode their abilities to spot cancers within a couple of months already. So there's definitely some kind of behavioral change for the users if they actually use AI. Or did I understand this article wrong?
No, I think you got it right. I think what this means or reflects is how our thinking capabilities can atrophy like a muscle you don't use. And I think part of the problem or the challenge is that some of the AI is so good, right? There are many studies, or several studies, better said, that show that when doctors use AI in combination, right? So it's the human plus the machine, not just the machine itself, they lead to better results. So if you have cancer, most likely you want to have a doctor who uses AI. And now the question is, are doctors then outsourcing too much of that thinking to AI? And I can tell from my own behavior, right? There are certain things that I use AI for a lot, and I can feel that I don't question it as much anymore. And so I think the takeaway here is that as AI allows us to work faster and more efficiently and lead to better results, critical thinking is one of the most important skill sets to retain, because it's so easy to just stop thinking critically about the output and accepting it for the best outcome or output.
Yeah. It's kind of also brings us into the scary questioning for the near future, what we're going to do with that, and how it's going to, are we going to dumb down? Does everybody need to like explain everything very, very easily to so we can understand this, or is it better to have some to keep on this critical thinking alive at this position?
Yeah, it's harder and harder, right? Like I think critical thinking already with Google eroded a little bit, because you are more likely to take the information that you can gain the easiest as the truth. And now with AI, that whole effect is 100x'd, right? It's much more poignant. And so I think very tactically, one of the best prompts that you can add to your daily habit or to your arsenal is, give me all the ways that your answer might be wrong, right? So whatever answer or output you get from an AI, your initial reaction should be, how could that be wrong? Or how could you be wrong? Or how could you be off?
Yeah. And I think like one of the things like we need to do nowadays is to become more and more efficient in a day-to-day work life. So like everything that we can outsource is something that adds actually value, because I can concentrate where I can actually really improve the value that we're doing on a regular basis. And for instance, now in this case, maybe to add value for SEMrush or any other company that I'm working for. Now I'm outsourcing some of the things which I'm not training myself on. So maybe I forget about these things that they might be still important. So this is like really interesting. Maybe we're starting to be more efficient. Maybe we're starting to be better and better to a certain degree. And maybe from there, it just goes downhill. Would you say this might be happening?
I think it's one of the leading theories, right, of human thinking, is that as machine thinking becomes like overtakes human thinking, at some point we're just gonna stop resisting and leave it more to the machines. And I think a lot can go wrong with that. If I look at how quickly AI can be wrong or hallucinate something, or how much it depends and is biased on the way that you formulate the prompt, I think we're still many, many years away from a future where the AI output is truly kind of the best, most factual, most truthy output that there is. So I think it makes sense that we're starting to question the output less. And I think it's also incredibly dangerous. And at the same time, I'm not very hopeful that we're going to do something about it. Right? It's like, see how difficult it is for you to stay off your phone and stop doom scrolling. Good luck with that, right? Like people go so far as buying phones that don't have certain capabilities, or from buying apps to block other apps. Our willpower is incredibly weak, and so good luck like leaning up against an AI that gives you incredibly convincing and fast answers that are usually very good, but then every now and then they make a very devastating and important error. Good luck filtering that out. I'm not hopeful, but it's important that we at least aim for it.
So we're getting into a doom's conspiracy at the one hand side, very philosophical at the same time, but I think it's like really interesting what we can do. And like I had two thoughts around this. One was I recently listened to a podcast, actually a German podcast called Tech KI and Schmetterling. I don't know if you heard of this so far.
No.
It's being brought into life with Sascha Lobo by the Schwarz Group. So
Yes.
kind of like very interesting. And he also said like there's an interesting pattern that has been identified throughout every technological evolvement. So also through different industrial revolutions, where kind of like always the same kind of different issues were actually addressed, always in the same kind of way. And what he also said, like they kind of didn't have to be wrong per se. Actually, some of those really were right, and it was good that they were addressed on a regular basis, because due to that they actually could lead to they have implemented corrections. So actually, like the worst case did not actually happen at this position. So I think that was kind of like very interesting to see, and to see also like doesn't matter if it's artificial intelligence or just inventing the electricity or the web or something like this. There's always like the same development, and people say, oh well, if you go back in time, people have been complaining about the same things. And if you go back to ancient Greeks, I think Socrates also said like he's not writing down anything because he thinks like if he has to write down, he's taking the thought out of his mind and doesn't need to remember these things. So he's like also outsourcing. So there are kind of like comparabilities around there, even though I wouldn't go so far to say like exactly the same.
Yeah, totally.
And I think now we just like stop drifting off at this position. And just, like, go back to...
That was my philosophical moment for today. I will go back to actionable stuff now.
And apparently we see Garnet's actually AI blocking have been very effective so far. So I just like quickly went onto the website and tried to see what happens if I just change my user agent, and actually did not do anything. But how did you take this article so far?
Yeah, so what happened here is that Gannett, which is one of the biggest publishers in the US, they used a CDN, Fastly, to block AI crawlers and to force AI developers and crawlers to pay up for crawling their content. This is very similar to what Cloudflare has announced, which is the pay per crawl model, where they would do the same. And again, it's not just Cloudflare as a CDN provider, Fastly and others provide this as well. And it's very interesting because Gannett, again, is a very big whale in the pond that is publishing in the US. And, there's still this kind of question whether this whole idea of pay per crawl would work out. And now we actually have a case study, and it seems like it does. And we don't have the exact numbers, right? So we have to be a bit careful here. This could also be, this maybe carries a little bit of PR makeup. Maybe the narrative is very favorable to Gannett. But long story short, Gannett has not been doing so well. The context here is also that they've been struggling. And part of this is because they're getting a lot less referral traffic from Google search because of AI overviews. And so now they're blocking AI crawlers to potentially monetize in different ways. And it is interesting to see that they say that this has been going well, that it's favorable. So we'll have to see kind of how it plays out. Also about when it comes to the street, meaning how does their stock price change over time? Their stock, I'm just doing a quick check, over the last month has been up 14%. I have to see when the last earnings were. I think, last earnings were July 31st. And within those earnings, I assume that this news has been broken. And ever since, the stock is up. I'm trying to gauge this about. Let's see. Sorry for the live action here. Click. I have to come back. Anyway, it's up a good a couple percent. And that's interesting to see if that will stick and if more publishers will adopt it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious to see if this works, like if this helps us to create new business models. And AI is disruptive because of the machine learning capabilities, and therefore different from former innovations. Obviously, yeah, it's true, and I haven't said that, but we see different patterns of same ways on how people are warning about these throughout different versions that we've seen before. So I think there's still a couple of interesting takes to that. So going also, sorry, do you want to say something?
No. I just wanted to confirm your that I agree with you.
Okay, perfect. And we see Lauren has something in the newsroom regarding content-driven strategy.
Yes. So this is very interesting. So this is the company Okta. And so Okta does authentication in the US, right? For all of my clients, I have an Okta account because I need to authenticate that, I am using their tools and Gmail and whatnot. So important company, pretty successful. And their content strategy has leaned heavily on news. They actually have a team of 6 people that make up this newsroom. And what I like about this is, first of all, this is almost like a shift backwards, because news content in an SEO world has not been very attractive. But now in the LLM world, it very much is. Actually, if you look at a lot of referral traffic stats, a lot of times it's to news articles, data stories, statistics, all that kind of stuff, because it is net new information. And so Okta is really leaning into this, and they're holding themselves to a very high business standard. So in the interview, Lauren Everett says that they're really holding themselves to a high degree of responsibility when it comes to an impact on the bottom line, meaning revenue and net new customers. And I will say, I think it's a delicate line, because not every piece of content obviously is geared towards converting people right from the bat. But the fact that they're able to sustain a team of 6 newsroom journalists for that long, and they hold themselves accountable for the bottom line, I think that says something. And so I wish I could look into Okta's internal analytics and look at how much referral traffic and how many citations the news content gets compared to their maybe classic SEO content. For example, they have a glossary on the site, and I think there is no better comparison than a glossary versus news content when it comes to what gets more citations and referral traffic from LLMs. And I would put a lot of money on that it's more the news content than the glossary.
Yeah. Especially, we've seen also in recent studies that freshness is also something that seems to be still key within this time range. So something to take into account, to analyze on a regular basis. So yeah, feeding the beast on a regular basis is something that seems to be coming up nowadays. And rather than to continue with evergreen content, kind of like has some Discover vibes, if I'm being honest, at this position.
Yeah, totally does them. And maybe they're also going for that a little bit. I'm not sure. I think it's tricky for SaaS companies to get meaningful Discover traffic, then also converts into customers. I'm not sure. I haven't seen this before. But I think it really plays into what successful content looks like when it comes to LLMs. In my way of my mental model is always, it has to be additive and it has to be active. So additive as in it has to provide net new information to whatever topic there is. Just rehashing the same information over and over does not give you any visibility on LLMs. And then active is, you need to solve, you need to allow customer or visitors when they come to your site to, to solve their problems with small apps and stuff. It's probably less applicable to news content, but the additive part is absolutely true. And that's why data stories, statistics, and news work so well when it comes to AI mentions and citations and referral traffic. But of course, you also need to, they need to be meaningful, right? It's not enough to just publish content under a news subdirectory. You actually need to have the content creation engine in the background that surfaces meaningful news.
It was just about to say, therefore this Discover approach, especially with Germany, where you have republishing content under the same ID, but just another URL strategy, just changing minimal things just to keep chaos. And also here, Rudy is just saying that that for sure that freshness is a factor nowadays. Kind of is. We've seen that. And the old stuff is Larry data. Training data, that's true as well, to be kind of, but interesting. Yeah. So 2 different ways on how to make money with creating new content. On the one hand side, with just getting money from people to crawl it, and on the other hand side, to just have a newsroom to be setting up. And interesting also how the thing that publishers are mainly complaining about seems to work in the it's a SaaS industry, right? So I would definitely say interesting take on that. So we got about 15 minutes left, so maybe we can do something like a quick fire round for the last 6 articles that we can work through.
Yes.
And also interesting that Bing made Google dance at this position and stole some kind of traffic. What you mentioned at the beginning, maybe should have actually mentioned this a little bit earlier at this station and talked about this at the beginning.
Yes, exactly. So to your point, right? Like when we said that Bing is one of the kind of winners, and who would have thought that Bing would be a search winner in 2025? That is a great add-on to that whole discussion. So Bing, if you scroll down a little bit further, or a representative of Bing, here we go. Publishers need to make money.
But we're trying to distribute traffic to other people. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. Is that the kind of just perfectly symbolic for? Now we should try to summarize the article with an LLM. But all joking or seriousness aside, Bing executives have shared statistics about how they are grabbing more share of search. And again, you have to be careful with this because it's most likely to be predominantly on desktop, because Bing is more pre-installed on Windows machines, especially laptops and stationary computers. But they are growing market share, right? And I think it's a couple of different reasons. One is that they have their Edge browser. They're making some noise with embedding Copilot very deeply in Edge. There are actually some cool features that I find at least interesting. So Edge and Microsoft are also joining these browser wars against Perplexity and OpenAI, and of course Google as well, and are trying to gain more market share to their Edge browser, which then translates into more market share for Bing. And then on the other hand, of course, ChatGPT is like a big, or Bing is a big source for ChatGPT. So I think both of these things are playing here into Microsoft's market position, and I still will hold on to what I said earlier, that even though they're gaining some market share, they will not replace Google, and that ship has sailed a long time ago. And I think that the browser in itself is becoming much more important than the underlying search engine. I think the underlying search engine is just, as the name says, right? It's just an engine, but is becoming less and less the end goal as browsers are giving more of the answers directly to you before visiting the site.
Yes, sounds interesting and very truthful at this position. So I think that's something we can definitely take for granted and see how this evolves. But yeah, browser wars are on, as we also seen that different companies try to buy Chrome nowadays.
Yep, I think Perplexity made a official bid of, what was it, $34 billion. Of course, a PR play, right? Nothing is to be taken seriously, but yeah, any company in the world would be happy to have Chrome.
And Chrome data.
Yes. maybe the data more so than the browser itself.
So, and here is, again, a question regarding, is ChatGPT really powered by Google? And we got a very interesting test that we've been seeing so far. So let's dive into this.
Yes, so Ahrefs has looked at a couple 100,000 queries, fan-out queries, that is, to test a hypothesis that ChatGPT has switched from Bing to Google. And what they found is that that's not necessarily true, because only a small amount of URLs showing up in ChatGPT also rank in the top 10 and top 20 and top 100 on Google. So here we see only 6.8% of ChatGPT results are present in the top 10 on Google, almost 10% in the top 20, and then only 16% in the top 100. So I think it adds an important piece of context and nuance to the whole conversation, because I think the narrative has been that ChatGPT made that switch. And I think what's much more true is that ChatGPT might rely on Google when Bing doesn't deliver good results, right? What I'm missing a little bit here from this study, what I would love as a follow-up, is the counterfactual, right? So for those URLs that are not showing up on Google, do they actually show up on Bing? And do they show up in the top positions? that's what's missing here for me. But I'm sure the Ahrefs team can provide that data, and I would love to see a follow-up to this.
Yeah, and just out of principle, I mean, I have to add this. I am very happy that you did not complain about the SEMrush study, but you do on the Ahrefs study. So I have to point that out of this position, even though there's some kind of additional thoughts what we could do next time to complete that. I think that's really cool. And we have Metehan joining. That's really nice.
What's up?
I think we also have the honor to meet in on Oktoberfest in a couple of weeks. I'm really interested to meet you there. So heads up for that. It's really cool that you're joining us. And we also have Video Technique. Glad to have you on board as well for today's session. So I think that's interesting. And also that ties back to the experiment we talked about earlier, where it was like checking this out, just creating some fictional keywords and just only letting Google to crawl those pages to see if they're showing up within here. And then also doing this for Bing and other search engines. So on the one hand side, I do believe that Google's also, that ChatGPT is actually distributing their traffic sources or their research sources to other systems. Actually, fun fact, because we also did this for some analyses. We know that ChatGPT actually usually is not able to render JavaScript. And now what we can also see if we try to access Google, it's not available if JavaScript isn't activated. So I think that's really interesting how they get actually the data at this position, because I think that raises a couple of questions nowadays.
Sure.
Good. So 9 minutes left. Let's jump into the next one. And also here kind of ties back a little bit to the changing in behaviors of doctors, but not only just doctors. We can also see that AI is changing the search behavior so far.
Yes. So Nielsen Norman Group conducted a usability study where they, I think, monitored 9 people in their search behavior when it comes to AI mode and to other like ChatGPT, etc. So it's essentially generative AI. And what's interesting is that the first thing that they say here is what we said earlier, which is that search habits are very hard to break. Right? A lot of people are still starting on Google. They're still very tied to the classic organic results. By the way, the selection of participants here has been framed around picking people that are not very technical, right? Like not like, like they're trying to find the average user, not a person that is very versatile in tech and maybe an early adopter of generative AI, but an average user. And these people, first of all, they're very surprised to find some AI in search. And second of all, when they find it, they actually find it quite useful, right? So you see that several participants in the study, they verbatim say that they will use more generative AI in the future because it's been so helpful. And it goes a little bit back to what you and I have been saying before. First of all, it's like we are very far ahead in all of this, and the average user is not. So they're still exploring and discovering AI. Age obviously is a big factor here. Second, people like this stuff, right? Like I think there's this underlying maybe bias that a lot of people in SEO, maybe including myself, have about AI, which is a negative bias, right? And part of this is reason or grounded in facts, because there's a lot of hallucination, there's a big danger, but also because we're seeing search traffic going down. And I think deep down, some of us are maybe a little, extra biased negatively against AI because it destroys the classic SEO model that a lot of us have been so successful in. So anyway, long story short, people like AI. It's useful in a lot of cases, and also the more exposure people have to AI, the more likely they are to use it because the experience is generally good.
Yeah, I actually believe the same thing is happening. So on the one hand side, many people who, like, if you would tell maybe the average person, okay, now you have to use AI, probably also they would go like, I don't want to do it at the beginning. But if they see it being frictionless, integrated into different systems, so you got in ChatGPT and in WhatsApp now some AI functionalities, they just sneakily slide them in, and suddenly you've got them, and you test them for some reason because oh look, I can ask it. Oh yeah, let's test it out, and suddenly it's working. And like, oh, that's actually being quite nice. And so you got like a step-by-step frictionless motion to come to it. So I would continuously argue on top of that there's AI integrated in so many processes where we don't even know that it actually is the case. For instance, when you create like just take a picture from somebody, and suddenly everything's being categorized to other pictures from the same person. Or these are all the AI features that we already have, and suddenly we found out that they're really, really useful, and it's really nice to have them. But if we would have asked at the beginning, like, do you want to use these kind of things? You'd be a little bit more scared of this. So I see some parallels even for us, even though thanks for complimenting, saying that we're already a little bit advanced in this situation. And yeah, we're calling me old Kevin.
Yes, I think I shushed. No, ended.
No, there's no discrimination. It's just to identifying patterns so far. So this is what we're looking for at this position, at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, but interesting take at this position, and how this is also being used on a regular basis. Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting, and we have to break the habit. And we'll see this evolving over time. I think it's too soon to tell this on a bigger picture. That's probably also one of the main messages here.
Very true.
Good. We've got 5 minutes left, so maybe we can make it in time. Let's see if that's turning out so far.
All right, let's do it. Okay, I'll be super quick. So Press Gazette here is citing a study from Chartbeat where they looked at over 560 publishers over the last 6 years and came to the conclusion that for most of them, traffic is not down. Oh man, you're reading this a lot. We're hitting the paywalls today, or the subscription walls. Anyway, I can summarize this top of my head. The most interesting thing about this Chartbeat study or analysis is that Google referral traffic to publishers is not down, and at the same time, a lot of publishers have to do layoffs and kind of sell to private equity companies because they're struggling, and a lot of times Google is named as the big reason. At the same time, Google says that traffic to publishers is not down, right? So it's kind of a he said, she said type of situation. And what I learned from other experts in the field, like Johan Hülsen, Jess Schultz, a couple of others who responded to me in my Slack group about this, is that there are many different reasons for why publishers are struggling. In some cases, the product is not differentiated enough. In other cases, they've been trying to automate with AI, etc. So apparently, there are still some publishers that are thriving. And the answer to why publishers are struggling is not always that Google traffic is down. And I will also say that I still have a hard time reconciling some of the findings of this study, right? I think that it raises more questions to me than it answers, but it is very interesting to see a data point actually validating what Google has been saying instead of disproving it.
And also presenting Google as a very easy blame game because they're down already. Everybody is like annoyed if they don't get any traffic, so it's easy to transfer. It's relatable from the arguments. And you can simply use that and say like, okay, they're the guilty ones. We need to lay you off. Sorry for that.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, let's take that. Then we're moving on. I think we had that already.
Yep.
And therefore, just a quick point that I thought was like also worthwhile mentioning, because we're seeing now that you can actually name your preferred sources when it comes to the top stories in search. I think there's like interesting shift in events, because we've seen that back in the days, it was in a situation where you were in a position where you could, as a publisher, get out there and say, okay, I want to be labeled as an official publisher at this position. So Google has actually said, we can do this on our own. There's no problem so far with this. And now they say like, okay, but the users, you can actually say you wanted to be this as a preferred solution. So it kind of like contradicts to their previous strategies they have been doing so far.
Why do you think they do this? Like, what's your take on why they do that?
So it kind of shows that Google may not always be the best choice to select what's your best solution. Because actually, my assumption was at the beginning that they should be able to do this on their own. So either they're not able to do this, which I kind of like not really can believe. On the other hand, maybe it's also like giving something back to the publisher story, because and I don't know if it's just me being too mean around this, but it kind of says like, look, we give your users the opportunity to name you as your preferred source, and nobody's naming you. So it's like going back to, so maybe it's some kind of like going back and also providing some arguments for the near future, for new arguments that will come into play. But I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What's your take?
I think I agree with you, because this is actually has been possible for a while. You know, as a user, you could already go to a publisher's knowledge graph and follow that entity, and you get those results in a preferred way. And so now Google is pushing that again. And I think it goes back to what you're saying, you know, like, I actually think that Google could very quickly find out what publishers are preferred for users based on their behavior. So this to me seems much more like a smokescreen, or a way to say, well, we gave users the option to select you as a preferred publisher. While the reality is that most users probably won't do this, because a lot of content is commoditized, right? And so unless you have very differentiated journalism and very investigative journalism, then it's very hard to stand out to users. But I think that's where publishers have to go down the line. And this feature here is more looks than substance.
Yeah. And it's cool to have, like, on every page another Google button. I think that's like maybe it's a backlink strategy from Google.
Yeah, exactly. Link building. They don't have enough visibility yet, so maybe
Yeah,
they need to use this SEMrush enterprise crawler to figure out some technical issues too.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to end today's show, to be honest. But yeah, actually, like, we just made it in time. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening, for commenting. Good to have this big audience at this point in time. And then sending you off, we have 302 Redux, so just temporarily to the weekend, to your home office or to your home time, and enjoy a couple of days and maybe a nice drink along the way, I'll say.
There you go. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.